Let's talk about race. You know, you can't see the money can't be eaten. It's where you are. When you believe the history of the assassins right, is where you be. Once again. But I got some help for you. Check this out. Here's an escalator, world dominator, miseducator, boom, tune, walk to the devil's lair. This virus erases faces, contagious to all types of places. Gotta peel layers off, and it ain't gonna get done soft. Discussion can stave off the bussin', fussin', bum rushin'. Politicians filibustering ways to usher in eugenetic disruption. Won't terrorize those with open eyes, not dealing with fakes who just wanna sit around and theorize. Meanwhile in the street, another pair of police state hate-related victimized eyes lay lifeless, looking at concrete. Many topics, many ways to drop it. Let's rap a taste. Before it's too late.
How did we get here? So as we move into post-Civil War eras, the Black Codes and Jim Crow laws. So as we had mentioned previously during the Civil War slides, a serious issue facing the newly freed African-American population were matters of overexposure, poor access to even basic resources such as food and water, and of course aspects of insufficient healthcare and education. Also, after the physical destruction caused by the physical conflict of the Civil War, there was a great number of both white and black refugees that had places that were either former dwellings or places that could be made to be dwellings, such as open real estate in cities such as Atlanta, that were functionally burned to the ground during the Total War campaign. And so there was a great number of refugees, regardless of race, that were in need of supervision and government assistance. And so for a number of years, there was a government agency that was directly for that, called the Freedmen's Bureau, that was able to provide many of these important resources to the newly freed Black community, as well as Southern whites that were also in need of such resources. However, the Freedmen Bureau would not last for as long as it could. Very quickly after its foundation, it was immediately attacked by Southern politicians. Frequently, it would be assaulted in Congress and discussed as a policy that would lead to laziness among the Black populations, which is obviously a social stigma in regards to Black people receiving aid from the government that long since persists after that all the way into the modern day. And as soon as there were enough votes that were backing this from Southern politicians, it was immediately stripped of its funding and eventually axed altogether as a government agency. Soon after this ended in Reconstruction, we could see the foundations of an entirely new era of how Black Americans would be treated now that they were no longer slaves in legality. And this was through strict monitoring and strict manners of being policed and adjusted to their newfound legal freedom. And these were through manners of law called Black Codes, which in many senses were just slavery in another name. So this was through manners of incredibly strict discrimination on the state level, since matters of the federal level were a bit too difficult to touch now. But through strict control over state legislature, very strict laws that were able to almost directly target Black people were passed. In many cases, these were laws that would directly target Black people, and they were able to do things such as heavily constrict how easy it was for Black people to vote, regardless of it being a amendment guaranteed right. There were lots of workarounds and legal loopholes that you could do in order to make it impossible for Black Americans to vote. Also, you could strip Black Americans of the right to serve in juries, as was their right as citizens, as well as many other rights that were generally guaranteed to American citizenry were able to be stripped from African Americans. There are lots of particular aspects that are really strict or particularly distinct. You have lots of examples of these things being particularly pervasive in the Deep South, such as in states of Mississippi, where you have specific codes in regards to how legal employment of individual types of Black people were able to be handled, even resulting in inability for certain Black peoples to be able to even leave certain causes of employment, very much feeding into the well-earned title of slavery by another name. In addition to these aspects of entrapment and placing Black people in positions where they're unable to freely travel about sufficiently or easily as a free citizen should be, you also have significant aspects of criminalization of petty crimes or extremely small scale crimes, which allows for law enforcement to be extremely heavy handed and strict in regards to how Black people were treated. Something that very much continues into the modern narrative about criminalization of mundane acts by African American people and Black people. So the Reconstruction Act of 1867 were a series of acts and laws that were passed in order to soften the harshness of the Black codes. Exactly. So when people talk about the eras of post-slavery after the Civil War and how that bled into racist laws, there's a significant blending in the minds of most people in regards to the Black codes and the Jim Crow laws as a nebulous singular stretch of time, when there is actually a particular legal and historical difference in terms of both their function and their implementation. So with the Reconstruction Act of 1867 is when you get into this particular shift where you move away from the previous Black codes and into the Jim Crow laws, where the Jim Crow laws had a specific focus on separating Black and white people after the court case of Plessy versus Ferguson, specifically in regards to the strengthening of the foundations of the term separate but equal, rather than the Black codes previously, which were specifically and much more blatantly targeting the even most basic rights and freedoms of technically freed Black people. So the Jim Crow laws, such as I had recently described, were very much about the segregation of Black and white people, allowing them to not be in close proximity or occupy the same public spaces. This included as simple a thing as being able to associate in certain spaces outside, using things such as the same bathrooms and water fountains. And this is something that a lot of people have a clear image in their mind of when they think of American segregation and the civil rights era, is this form of law and this form of oppression. Incredibly pervasive and entrenched system of laws that were across every level of being a private citizen and stretching well into aspects of government service, such as the military. During this era is when you also get a specific boom in a lot of the particular physical caricatures that continue to be used to demonize Black people. Is where you have a lot of the births of specific stereotypes, which still continue to this day, such as blackface is a very commonly known one.
Let's talk about it. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about race. Let's talk about race.
On a bridge to nowhere, lost along the way.
Let's talk about race.